good afternoon to one and all present here. Today, I am in the form of Rohini Educational Society, sworn to provide quality education in 1983, has flourished to a tree spreading into branches and stems of education far and wide. Through its concerted efforts, the Society has created several institutions of known standards and repute from imparting quality education right from the kindergarten stage to master level under the brand name Geetha. Geetha is an international business school. It was established in the year 2004. It is a self-financing ISO 9001, 2008 certified and NAAC accredited institution. It is affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi and approved by All India Council for Technical Education, Ministry of HRD, Government of India for Technical Courses and Bar Council of India for Law Courses. The institute conducts various courses namely MBA, MBA International Business, BBA, BLLB and BPLLB. GIBS has been graded A by the National Assessment and Accreditation Council in the second cycle. GIBS has been rated A+ by the State Fee Regulatory Committee, a fee committee of Government of NCT of Delhi. GIBS has been rated highest grading A by the Joint Inspection Committee of Government of NCT of Delhi and Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University since 2013 till date. Entrepreneurship Cell, many schools in India, and 34th in top 100 private institutes in India, and 19th in top 20 North B school surveys in programs of MBA by the Times Business School Survey 2022. Also, GIBS has been rated number 2 by the PAN India in BBA program by Times Business School Survey in 2021, 2019 and 2018. Honorable Vice Chairman Shri Anirudh Jindal Sir awarded with ET Leadership Excellence Award in 2023 in Academic Excellence for Geetha Educational Group by the Economic Times. Honorable Dean Ma'am, Ms. Prachi Jindal received ET Excellence Award for Corporate Affairs in Higher Education for Geetha International Business School by the Economic Times. As one of the national capital's leading business schools, GIBS brings together people, cultures, and ideas from around the corner to change lives and to transform organizations. The institute is an ideal setting for learning, a diverse community knit together by its physical environment as well as its commitment to the highest standard of excellence, integrity, free expression, and inquiry. Gender sensitization is a foundational step towards achieving gender equality, social justice, and human rights for all individuals, regardless of the gender identity or expression. It requires ongoing education, dialogue, and action at individual, institutional, and societal levels to create lasting positive change. To fulfill our intent for the day, we have with us Dr. Vinita Chandra. Dr. Vinita Chandra is an English professor at Ramjas College, University of Delhi. She has done her PhD from Rutgers University and has acted as a member in the International Complaints Committee of DA. She has worked on numerous individual cases along with working extensively on the issue of sexual harassment on campus. She has been currently is a member of IIT Delhi ICC as an external member. Now I would like to invite Director Sir to present a brief and a warm welcome along with Prachi ma'am to our guests today. We welcome you, ma'am.
Called for gender sensitization, then a small bunch of women turn up, and it doesn't seem the men are very interested. So I'm very impressed with this institution that so many young people are here for the session. I want this to be an interactive session. Is that okay? Yes? Interactive is good because I know that you all have many more questions than I can even imagine. And so what I'm going to do is I'll speak for about 10-15 minutes and then I'll open it out for questions. Is that okay? Yeah? Alright. I want to actually start by asking the question that why do we need a gender sensitization session at all? Now, I know that many people here think that what does gender have to do with exploring identities, because you all are here to study law and to study business management, and what does your identity have to do with gender in that case? I'm also told very often that people say, now women can vote, women are educated, women have jobs, women are on par with men. So why do we still need to talk about gender sensitization? I'm not sure what all the young people here feel. I'm just grateful to the institution that they recognize its importance. So I actually have two reasons why this conversation is important, and I'm just going to try to talk a little bit about both, and then I'll ask you all to comment on what you think. You know, the one very crucial thing I like to say, and especially in a group that has so many young men, is that gender is not about women. Gender is about men and women. And maybe a little bit of what I'm going to do today is talk more about how gender affects men rather than only looking at how gender affects women. But the second reason that I want to say why this conversation is important even today is because I want us to remember that even today, in every country and society across the world, there is gender inequality. We know that in Iceland they have passed a law to close the gender wage gap, but even now the gender wage gap is not closed even in Iceland. So whether it comes to jobs, pay, leadership, authority, power, any of the things we can think of, we still have inequality in all countries, in all societies. We still have female feticide, we still have dowry deaths, we still have worldwide one rape per minute. So maybe what I should do briefly is ask the audience, because I know it's late in the afternoon and everyone seems a little bit distracted. Why do you think that even in this day and age in 2024, why do you think that there is so much inequality still? Does anybody want to take a guess why there is so much inequality still? Does anybody want to answer that question? Why is there so much inequality among genders even today when women clearly, I mean, look at all the women here. I love the fact that the most important person here is a woman. Why do you think there's so much inequality? So, does anyone want to major a guess at all? Law professor here to talk about law and business. Perhaps you all might have paid more attention, and that I think perhaps is the answer to why we still need to talk about gender sensitization, because I know it seems to be not a very important thing to talk about. And so I hope that one of the things you can take away from today afternoon is just thinking about your own gender identities, which is actually what I want to talk about. I just want to answer the question I had also asked about being literate and educated. One of the things that we need to educate ourselves about is something that we don't like to think about at all, which is patriarchy. So we seem to all know what patriarchy is, but I think if we understand that patriarchy is the foundation on which all societies are built. Patriarchy is structural to our society. Patriarchy governs every single thing in our lives. Patriarchy determines our rituals, our traditions, our customs. If you think about the ways in which we get married, if you think about all the customs and traditions we have, even laws, they all come from patriarchy. But more than that, patriarchy also affects the way that we dress, the way that we walk, the way that we talk, the way that we have relationships with each other. All of these are determined by patriarchy. And as young people who are in the university, not simply to get an education about law or business management, you're also here to explore identities. And I think it's crucial to think how your identities have been shaped by patriarchy. So as I said, it's easy to see how patriarchy affects women. I'm going to ask every single woman in this room, every single woman, the teachers and the directors and everyone, when you get up in the morning to get dressed to get out to work, is there a single woman here who doesn't think, what should I wear? Are my clothes too transparent? Am I going to come back by public transportation? What will happen if I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time? Suppose my transportation breaks down and I'm alone at night. Is there a single woman who does not think every single day about what should I wear, which doesn't show that I am too easy or I'm too loose or I'm too prudish? What is it? What color should I wear? What material should I wear? Is there a single woman here who doesn't think about that? And I also want us to think about how men never need to think about that at all. So it is easy to look at the ways in which women are socialized. We know women are socialized. We are taught from the time we are very young that our bodies are a place where violence can happen to us. And I don't remember my own childhood at all, but I do remember that when my daughter was maybe 4 or 5 years old, I've forgotten, very young. I had plumbers coming in the house and she was lying on the bed with her legs up in the air and her underwear was showing, she was wearing a frock. And I said, "Beta, pad niche karo." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Underwear dikh rahi hai." And she said, "So what?" I mean, for me, I still remember as a mother to try to explain to my 4-year-old daughter that her underwear should not show because there are men in the house. Meanwhile, my son was running around without his t-shirt क्योंकि गर्मी के दिन थे, घर में काम चल रहा था, दरवाजा खुला हुआ था. And I think almost every woman here will resonate with the fact that we need to think about the violence that can happen to our bodies at any time. I know that a lot of violence happens to men, and I will also talk about sexual violence for men later on, but I want us to think about how that we know that if we are out late at night on the road, for us, even for me now, if a man is there, he will worry that he will get beaten up. If a woman is there, she will worry that she will get beaten up and raped. So it is easy to see how patriarchy functions for women. They are married, given away to another house, they have to change their names, they have to leave their places. It's the women who are kept inside the house. All these things we know, right? So I'm not going to go into all of this. But I want us to think about how patriarchy also affects men. One of the things patriarchy does is it fixes gender roles. And if there's anything I want you to take away from today is to think about this. How has your gender role been fixed for you by society? If patriarchy decides what women can do, patriarchy also decides what men can do. And I want all the young men here to think, unless you are exceptionally lucky and have come from a very tolerant background, which your parents might be, but you know, mamas, chachas, masis, you know how they are. When you fall down as a young boy, you are told, don't cry, tum ladki nahi ho, ladka ho, aansu pocho, aansu mat nikalo, right? So boys are taught from the time they are very small to not be soft. Soft is seen as a weakness. You have to be tough, you have to be masculine. And one of the things about being tough and masculine is controlling your women. Is controlling your sister, is controlling your girlfriend, is controlling your wife, controlling your daughter, right? I'm going to ask all the boys here, is that always, अकेले मजा मैं चलता हूँ. What does that मैं चलता हूँ mean? That means कि मुझे पता है कि तुम्हारा रेप हो सकता है, मैं तुम्हारे साथ हूँ to make sure it doesn't happen. But how long can you accompany the women in the house? So when men are meant to protect, to keep in control the women, then they have to become police. They have to become very tough. How do you control your women? You tell them don't use a mobile, don't dress in this way, don't go out at night. You tell them कि शादी उससे मत करो, उसके साथ बात मत करो. So in a sense, you have to put the women in a jail, in a prison. Now what happens when you put people in a prison and you have to make sure every single minute of your life कि वो किससे बात कर रही है, वो क्या खा रही है, कहाँ जा रही है? What happens? That you become a jailer, and there is no freedom for a jailer either. So in a sense, what patriarchy does is fixing these gender roles, that women have to be protected, men have to protect. Women are vulnerable, men are masculine. Men cannot afford to be soft and emotional, then both genders are in a prison. There is no way to interact as an individual, what you really are. So one of the things I just want to say with patriarchy is that what it does to us is it wipes out entirely our true individuality. It tells us exactly how we have to behave. Now, I know we're in 2024 and it's just wonderful for me to see women who are studying law and business management, and half of you are women here, because that means you're going to join the workforce. But I want to ask you all that if your parents decide to get you married when you're 24 or 25 or 26, you most likely will have to give in and get married because women don't really need to work. It's good if they do. How many boys over here have that freedom? Supposing the boy said, I don't want to earn. I want to stay home and I want to look after the house. How do you think society is going to treat those boys who want to be soft, who will be seen as weak, who will be seen as mardandi nahi hai? So while patriarchy teaches women to be submissive and oppresses women, it creates what we today, your generation has given us this term called toxic masculinity. There is no masculinity that is toxic masculinity. Do you remember that old Amitabh Bachchan movie who said, "Jo mard hota hai, usse dard nahi hota hai"? Do you remember that movie? So if you're a mard, you cannot afford to show any weakness. Now, one of the things we know is that boys are not allowed to talk about their emotions. And I really do hope that while you all are here making friendships among yourselves, you find friends who you can talk about your emotions to. Why is it important to talk about your emotions? Do you know that many more men die of heart attack than women, and many more men die of heart attack than women because they are never allowed to express themselves? This is what society does to us. So one of the things I wanted to talk about briefly was how patriarchy affects men as well as women, how it fixes our gender roles. Now, the one thing that I get back very often is saying, well, women are patriarchal too. And you're absolutely right. वो सास होगी जो बहू को मारेगी, वो माँ होती है जो बेटी को कहती है कि घर से बाहर नहीं निकलो, कपड़े कैसे कैसे पहने हैं. So it is true that women also internalize patriarchy. And patriarchy is so deeply networked in all of us that I think for any of us here, I'm talking to all the older women here, it is impossible to not be able to take it out of us. We are taught that we know less, that we have to listen to men, and so we do that. Before I was coming here, I was telling a male colleague of mine that I'm going to Gita International Business School to talk about sexual harassment. And he started telling me, you know, the really important thing about sexual harassment, and I listened to him for a few minutes before thinking to myself, I'm the expert. And I am being mansplained by this person suddenly about what I should say about sexual harassment here. But even though I've been doing this work for a quarter of a century, it took me 5 minutes to realize that I was being mansplained about what sexual harassment is. This is how much all of us internalize patriarchy. But also, in a patriarchal structure, the only power that women have is patriarchal power. So if we want power in a patriarchal system, we take the power of the men and we try to share the power of the men, because that's the only power there is. So the sas who is torturing the bahu is using patriarchal power. The mother who is telling the daughter she can't go anywhere is using the power of patriarchy, that is the power of men, to control the women. And if you look at what patriarchy does, it allows women to do most of the dirty work for it to keep women in place. So just moving from there, what I want us to think about for a minute or two is how is this connected to exploring identities? And I want you all to think, and I'm going to ask you to speak a little bit about this also. When you come to the university, are you coming here only to study law and business management? Or is this also the first time that you have got some freedom after being out of school, where you can also try to have a day, and I'm not talking about romantic relationships only, where you can try to find people who you relate to, right? Whether it is other friends or whether it is men and women. And so, what is it that patriarchy does in fixing our gender roles? It doesn't allow us to think of all the potential that we have within us. So, one of the things about exploring identity is thinking critically about what is it that has set your gender role. I want you to go back and think about the first time that you are aware that you're a boy or a girl. Now you're all 18, 19, 20 years old. How many of you remember the first time, let me just see hands, that you realized that you're a girl or a boy? How old were you when you realized that? How old do you think? 2, 3, younger than 2 or 3? What do you think? Like maybe 3 years old? Don't you think, when you realized that you're a boy or a girl? Yeah. How old were you when you realized that being a boy is different from being a girl and the other way around? So when you realize that you are different, then along with it come all the responsibilities of that difference. In pretty much every household, it will be the mother who will be in the kitchen. When the mother is in the kitchen, the daughter will go in the kitchen with her. When the father is not in the kitchen, the boys will sit out of the kitchen with her. I want to ask how many boys here are told by their mother कि खाना लगा दो टेबल पे, या मेहमान आया है मेहमान को खाना खिला दो. Let me see how many boys here actually go in the kitchen and are told by their mothers. Excellent. I see 2 hands up here, 3, 4 hands. See, this is the difference. This is the difference that gender training is making for us today. I also want to ask, how many girls here go in the kitchen to help their mothers or are told by their mothers that you need to, mehman aaye hain, kuch khana dena hai, to madad kariye. How many girls? Let me see hands. Yeah. That's pretty much all the girls. So I want to ask you all, what is it that makes girls better suited to help in the kitchen than boys? And here's one of the things I want to say to you all, and then I will open it out to you all to ask questions and share experiences. Nature has not given us anything that makes men more suited for something and women more suited for other things. There is nothing natural about it. There is nothing divinely ordained about it. Just because women have babies does not mean that women are better at looking after those babies once they are born than men are. And one of the things every woman who's a mother will share with me is that the most famous pediatricians in the world are men. It is those men who tell us how to look after our babies, and yet the father is not considered intelligent enough or something to hold a newborn baby or to bathe a newborn baby. That is seemed like a man can't do it, and yet men tell us how to do that. If you look at cooking in the house, which in general, I know that a lot of men go in the kitchen to make something. In general, it will be the women who are in the kitchen. The most famous chefs in the world are men. They are not women. You don't find very many famous chefs who are women. So how is it that when it comes to excellence in cooking, it is men or looking after babies? You think about housework. I was doing a faculty development program with faculty members, and one member put up his hand and he said, बात ये है कि जब मेरी बीवी के हाथ में झाड़ू आता है ना तो घर ठीक से सफाई हो जाती है, मुझसे सफाई नहीं होती है, तो women are better at doing झाड़ू than men. And I just thought to myself, I said to him very politely, it's because she has practice. She has practice in doing झाड़ू every day. आप रोज practice करो, you will become as good as her. So God or nature has not given women any organ that makes them better at cooking or at cleaning or at doing anything else, even looking at children. So if we think about all the gender roles that we have that are man-made, then I think one of the ways of looking at those gender roles is if it is made by us, it can be changed by us. It can be rethought by us. Now I know that that's not a very easy thing to do, but I think the question perhaps, if we want to rethink our identities, explore our identities, then where do we start? And one of the things places to start is to critically think about how your role in society has been shaped for you and to start unlearning those roles. There's a famous woman, Simone de Beauvoir, and she says, women are not born women, they are made, they become women by society. So when a girl is born, and you all know this now, that sex is biological, but gender is sociological. And I think one of the reasons that the Institute has also called me here is because you have been raised by a certain generation, but you will go out there to raise the next generation, whether it is your biological children or it is the next generation. How are you going to change the things that you did not agree with for the next generation? Or are you going to take the same gender roles like hand-me-down clothes? कि वो पुराने कपड़े हमें भी देने हैं, वही पुराने कपड़े हम इनको भी दे देंगे, वही चीज़ चलते जाएगी और कुछ बदलेगा नहीं. Now, in order to change gender roles, it is important to unlearn. What do I mean by unlearn? Unlearn is to try to see if it is the sister who is getting up to get the glass of water, is it possible to think for the woman herself, why am I the one doing this? In any romantic relationship, if it is only the man who can make the first step, then remember that those romantic relationships are shaped by patriarchy. What should a man do in a relationship? What should a woman do in a relationship? Who should get the roses on Valentine's Day? Who should pay for the dinner? All of these are fixed by patriarchy and are followed by us. And when we accept some gender roles, then we accept all others. Then we accept that there is no other way for us to be able to behave at all. So when we start unlearning gender roles, what are some of the things that we start looking at? We start looking at our relationship to society around us. What is that relationship to society around us? A lot of research has been done on how many women speak in public places and how many men speak in public places. As women are raised, they are told, चुप रहो, लोगों के सामने ज़्यादा मत बोलो, बड़े लोग आए हैं चुपचाप बैठो, लोगों की बात सुनो. As boys grow up into men, they are encouraged. You must also speak up. You must take your place in society. Your role in society is to be an active member of society. So how do we bring about these changes when women are silenced and men are not? How do we bring in changes to men to allow them to enjoy so many of the things that women enjoy? Look at the ways in which women can dress up. Look at the ways in which women can hug each other. Look at the ways in which women can confide with each other. And let me just ask all the girls here, when you have a night that you're spending out with your friends, what do you do? What do you do? You talk, you laugh, you share your experiences, and you share emotions and ideas. In most cases, men who spend time together are not going to laugh and cry and talk about their experiences because we have been taught that you don't talk about these things at all. Now, if we move from here to thinking about how is unlearning your gender role going to help you at all, I'm going to ask you, I know if I ask you for any question, you're all going to start talking to each other and then you get scolded by all the teachers here. But I want to ask you, is there anything in your young life so far that you have thought about and disagreed with as per your gender role? Is there anything that you disagree with the way that you are raised? And if you disagree, have you fought for it? And have you thought why it is there? Is it possible for me to ask for somebody to share an experience without everyone talking? I don't want to continuously give you a lecture because you're all going to get bored to death. So tell me, is there anyone that would like to share an experience about anything that you feel is wrong in the way you have been brought up according to your gender? Not in other things, but because you're a girl, you've been told to do some things, or because you're a boy. Does anyone want to share an experience here at all? Do you pretty much agree with the way that you've been brought up? Yes, no? How many people agree with the gender roles they have been brought up with? Let me just see hands. Here is someone who actually agrees with the way they have been brought up. Tell me, do you think that gender roles that we have in the society today are okay? Yes, no? Yes? Are they okay? Do we need to change anything at all? Do you want to say something?
Ma'am, to answer your question, which you asked, like, is there something wrong with the upbringing and everything? So, as far as I remember, there were times when I was told that don't do this because this तुम्हारा भाई संभाल लेगा, तुम ये कर लो पहले, ठीक है? And sometimes also, like, I'm pursuing law right now, and it's a 5-year long degree. So sometimes parents also come up like मेरा 18 साल का लड़का होता तो दुकान पे लगा दिया था, तो पढ़ाई कर दो पहले. Sometimes happens, like not particularly my parents, but like some रिश्तेदार also, like बुआ मौसी like. So they also come saying like.
So do most girls hear something like this mostly? Do most girls hear things like that? how does that make you feel? So as you're growing up and you're 18 years old or 19 years old, just now you're in a 5-year law degree, what do you think is the way in which parents look at boys in a 5-year law degree and girls in a 5-year law degree? And so what I wanted us to think about is that if our identities are shaped without thinking, then one of the things that we will do is we will shape the identities of our children without thinking. There is so much conversation around gender identities today because of a lot of work that the women have done in the women's field. And I'm just going to give you very quickly an idea of what happened 100 years ago. So we're in 2024. Until 1920, well, let me say until 1920 or so, there were pretty much no women across the world that had the right to vote. It took women going out on the street, that's the first wave of feminism, the suffragette movement. The women went out on the street, they fought for the right to vote. And women got the right to vote in Europe only after the First World War, because so many men had gone to the war and women had to come into the factories, and because women had to start working by the time the men came back, and remember a lot of men did not come back from the war, so then the right to vote was given to women because they had proved themselves. The second right that women asked for was right to education. Most women were not educated. So the first wave of feminism that women fought was the right to vote and education. What do you think happens in the second wave of feminism? Let me just ask you all quickly, have you any idea how the second wave of feminism starts in America and Europe? There are three things that allowed women to fight for themselves. The first one was contraception. The birth control pill was, I think, came out in 1959 or 1960. For the first time, women had freedom from constant reproduction. If you asked your grandparents how many children they had, grandmothers how many children they had, or great-grandmothers, many, because there was no question of having control. Women just did not have control over how many children they should have. So when you have one child after another, after another, after another, there is no time to think about anything. So one was contraception. And remember that. What is it that revolutionized women's lives? The second one, if you can believe it, in the West, was kitchen appliances. Because women spend so much time doing household work that when the washing machine, the vacuum cleaner, the dishwasher, the mixie, choppers, when you are chopping vegetables, when these things came into the kitchen, women could get out of the kitchen. So if you see until the 1950s or 60s, women were trapped by their own bodies and by their domesticity. I know in many places in India there was domestic help, but not for all women. It was only the privileged women who had some domestic help. And the third thing, of course, was that by now women had an education, women had been in the workforce for a while. So the 1960s feminism that starts asking for equality, which is called radical feminism, that starts in the 1960s or 70s. And it is only by the 1990s that women like us in India said, we are not part of that white feminist movement. Our lives are very different. So we want to use what the white feminists have talked about to apply to our own lives. And because this is a conversation that you all have grown up with, you never have to think, I mean, many of you are probably going to vote in this election, yes? The reason you're going to vote in this election is because women fought for women's right to vote. The reason that you're getting an education is because women fought for women's right to be educated. So one of the things to remember is that if we are here, there has been a huge battle before us that has allowed us to be in these spaces at all. I cannot imagine 25 years ago this institution even having a gender sensitization session because it was just meant to be something that was already fixed. If women got raped, it was their fault. If women got sexually harassed, it was their fault. If women felt inferior, it was their fault. Men were just meant to control the world. So just to think about what is your role in this then. If women have fought for you, how are you going to take this ahead? So I did want to open this out to you all. I don't know how much interest there is in asking questions at all, which might help me to say something which is more interesting to you all. Are there questions that anybody might have over anything I have said so far? And I do know that for the young audience of this time, 2024, you're also thinking about sexuality. Is that right or not? So the term LGBTQ has come up in the 1990s. And LGBTQ has become LGBTQIA plus now because again of the movement, the gender movement, where we're talking about different sexualities. If we look at the fact that we live in what we call a heteronormative society, that is the norm is heterosexuality. Men are expected to get married to women, women are expected to get married to men. And a lot of the work that I have done with students in my own college is to look at people who don't fit into that model. What happens to people who don't fit into the model where you want to get stuck it all over the body? Now, how does that allow us to live in dignity? So the fundamental right guaranteed to us in the Constitution guarantees us the right to live in dignity. It guarantees us a safe workplace, and a safe workplace means safety in order to work without hostility. And I want us to think about how many spaces do women occupy that are safe from hostility. If you could say that the minute you entered the gate of your university and there was safety here, you didn't have to worry about what you're wearing, what you're doing, whether you're laughing, whether you're talking, you knew you would be safe. Would that not change all our lives? Would it not change our lives just to know that we are safe, that we are not going to get violated? I go to Iceland every year to teach in the United Nations University. Iceland is usually #1 in the gender equality index, although there is gender inequality there also. And one of the things in Iceland is there is no rape. There is no jumping back from the bush and raping kind of rape at all, none. And if you tell them what a great country you are, nobody has raped, they say, what are you saying? 2 years ago, those people had come from Denmark and raped a woman. 2 years ago, there was one rape, and they talk about that today. We can pick up our newspaper any single day. It is impossible that we don't find a rape there. So walking in Iceland means that you don't have to look over your shoulder. You don't have to worry about what you're wearing. I have been in their downtown in the middle of the night, young girls completely drunk sitting on the road. Nobody will touch them. Can you imagine living in a world like that? So one of the things Simone de Beauvoir says, she says, imagine living in a world that has complete equality, actually equality. She says,
Do you have anything to say? Do you have any questions? Or let's share with everybody else.
okay, I know that there are many questions in your own minds, and I know that that's something that you hopefully will think about as you go on. I want to say a last thing with which I want to give a bit of a trigger warning. In most sessions I go to, I find that among young people, there has been child sexual molestation. And I find that that is something, especially when it happens within the family, is never talked about. I do want you all to think about anything that violates your space or body as something that you have a right over. And this is not only girls who are molested, it is also boys. And I think it is much harder for boys to speak about sexual molestation than it is about girls, because somehow sexual molestation of boys takes away your mardani, takes away your strength. But I do want to say to all of you, if there's one thing that you might carry away from here, is that you do not have to tolerate sexual harassment for even 1 minute in your lives. Not even 1 minute. And if things happen, the most important thing is to talk about it. And so I do, with this very sort of dark conversation about how things don't change, I want you to know that the one reason I agreed immediately when I was called here, I didn't know about Geeta Ratan, but I looked it up and I found what a great institute it is. But the minute I was asked, I said yes, because I really believe that it is very important for young people to think about gender, to think about the ways that their bodies have been violated, can be violated, to know that there is a law that protects you, that this is not something that you have to face, and to know that unless you can unlearn your fixed gender identities, you don't have freedom, that you are tied within the prison the society has put you. That is why it is important for me to come here and hope that something that I have said somewhere on this very hot late afternoon might resonate with you, and you might have a question, or you might have something that you think of in your own lives. I know that there is not a single person here who has actually listened to what I am saying, who doesn't have some thoughts about their own lives and what has happened. And I would be happy to share an email ID for students to send emails or contact in any way as you like later on. So thank you very much for patiently listening to me, and if there are any questions, I will.
Our Chairman Sir, Yaran Jindal, Vice Chairman Sir, Anil Jindal, Dean Ma'am, Prachi Ma'am, Director Sir, Dr. Professor Vikas Ma'am, for guiding us and for encouraging us to organize these events under NSS, and so that we are able to educate and help the students and work towards bringing a more